My name is Adelaide. I'm 28 years old and a nurse from Boston who always dreamed of having a loving family. After years of fertility treatments, I was overjoyed to finally become a mother. When I attended my parents' holiday dinner to announce my pregnancy, I never expected them to laugh and say, "Not our grandchild." As contractions began, I forced myself into the car and drove to the hospital alone. If you're watching this story, drop a comment letting me know where you're from and hit subscribe to join me as I share how I responded when my mother knocked on my door a week later begging to see her grandchild. I grew up in a strict, traditional family in suburban Boston where appearances mattered more than feelings. My father, Richard, was the CEO of a successful insurance company that had been in our family for 3 generations. My mother, Martha, was the perfect corporate wife, always dressed impeccably, hosting dinner parties for my father's clients and maintaining our image as the ideal American family. There was just one problem in their perfect picture: they had always wanted a son. "Adelaide, sit up straight. No one will take you seriously if you slouch," my mother would remind me daily throughout my childhood. My father was more direct. "If only you were a boy, you could take over the family business someday." I spent my entire childhood trying to earn their approval. I maintained a perfect GPA, became captain of the debate team, and even learned golf because my father loved it. Nothing was ever enough. My achievements were acknowledged with brief nods while my shortcomings were discussed at length during our formal family dinners. "Did you know the Patterson's daughter got accepted into Harvard?" "Now that's impressive," my mother would say, despite my acceptance into Boston University's nursing program with a scholarship. "Nursing is fine, Adelaide, but doctors make the real decisions," my father added. I chose nursing because I wanted to help people directly, to provide comfort during their worst moments. My parents saw it as settling for less, another disappointment to add to their list. Then I met Jackson during my second year of nursing school. He was different from anyone I had ever known: kind, supportive, and genuinely interested in my thoughts and dreams. He didn't come from money. His parents had died in a car accident when he was 19, leaving him to put himself through school while supporting his younger sister. "You have the most beautiful heart," Jackson told me on our third date. "The way you care for your patients, the way you light up talking about them, that's special, Adelaide." For the first time, someone valued me for exactly who I was. When Jackson proposed after 2 years of dating, I knew my parents wouldn't approve. He was studying to become a paramedic, while serving in the military reserves, honorable work, but not prestigious enough for the family that had hosted senators at their dinner table. "You're making a mistake," my father said bluntly when I told them about our engagement. "He has no family connections, no trust fund, no prospects. What kind of life can he give you?" "A happy one," I replied, standing my ground for perhaps the first time. We married in a small ceremony with Jackson's sister, my college roommate, and a few friends from work. My parents attended but remained cold and distant, leaving immediately after the ceremony without attending our modest reception. Marriage to Jackson was everything I had hoped for. We moved into a small apartment, worked opposite shifts to save money, and dreamed about our future family. Jackson was deployed twice in our first year of marriage, and I worried constantly, but our bond only grew stronger through the separation. When we decided to try for a baby in our third year of marriage, we assumed it would happen quickly. It didn't. Month after month, I stared at negative pregnancy tests, my heart breaking a little more each time. "It's okay, Addie. We'll try again next month," Jackson would say, holding me while I cried. After a year of trying, we consulted a fertility specialist who discovered I had endometriosis. The treatment would be expensive, much more than we had saved. Insurance would cover some, but not all. When I hesitantly mentioned the situation to my mother during one of our brief monthly phone calls, hoping for support, her response was immediate. "Well, perhaps this is for the best. You should focus on your career before thinking about children. Besides, are you sure Jackson's genes are what you want to pass on?" I never mentioned our fertility struggles to my parents again. Jackson and I worked extra shifts, cut out every unnecessary expense, and slowly saved for the treatments. Jackson even sold the vintage motorcycle he had restored himself, his only hobby and prized possession. After 3 rounds of failed treatments that drained our savings and left us emotionally exhausted, the 4th attempt worked. When the nurse called with positive results, I collapsed on our kitchen floor in tears of joy. Jackson and I spent that night planning our baby's future, picking potential names, and dreaming of the family we would create. 2 weeks later, Jackson received notice of another deployment. His unit was being sent overseas for at least 9 months. My heart sank at the realization he might miss the birth of our child. "I'll be there in spirit every second," he promised the night before he left his hand on my still flat stomach, "and I'll fight like hell to get leave when the baby comes." As I watched him board the military transport, I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe this baby would be the bridge that could heal our family. Surely my parents couldn't resist their own grandchild. Perhaps this new life would finally bring the acceptance I had always craved. I was wrong. The first trimester of my pregnancy was brutal. Morning sickness hit me like a tsunami, usually during the middle of my 12-hour hospital shifts. I would rush to the staff bathroom, vomit, quietly rinse my mouth, and return to my patients with a professional smile. No one knew except Tara, my closest friend at work and fellow nurse. "Adelaide, you need to tell your supervisor," Tara insisted one day after finding me slumped against the bathroom wall, exhausted. "You're working with chemotherapy patients. You need accommodations." "I can't," I replied, splashing cold water on my face. "I need the overtime for the baby. Jackson's military pay only stretches so far." Working double shifts while pregnant wasn't just about money, it was about keeping my mind occupied, not giving myself time to dwell on how alone I felt. Jackson and I managed video calls when the connection overseas allowed it, but they were frustratingly brief and often interrupted by poor signals. "You look tired, Addie," he said during one of our calls, his face pixelated but his concern clear. "Are you resting enough?" "I'm fine," I lied, hiding the dark circles under my eyes with careful makeup. "The baby's fine too. Doctor says everything is on track." What I didn't tell him was how I'd been sleeping with a pregnancy pillow on his side of the bed, pretending it was him. How I talked to his photo every night, updating him on the baby's development. How I had started recording voice memos for him and the baby in case something happened to him overseas. At 16 weeks, I started bleeding at work. Tara found me in the supply closet, panic-stricken, and immediately called for help. I was admitted to the same hospital where I worked, diagnosed with a threatened miscarriage, and put on strict bed rest for 2 weeks. "Is there someone we should call for you?" the admitting nurse asked. I thought of my parents wondering if this emergency would finally bring out their concern. "My mother," I said, giving her number. My mother answered on the first ring. "Adelaide, I'm in the middle of planning the charity gala. Can this wait?" When I explained the situation through tears, her response was clinical. "These things happen, just follow the doctor's orders. I have to go, the event planner is on the other line." Those 2 weeks in the hospital were some of the longest of my life. Jackson was unreachable due to a special operation. No family visited. I watched other patients receive flowers, balloons, stuffed animals, their rooms filled with evidence of being loved. My room remained empty until the third day when Dr. Natalie Kim stopped by, outside of her regular rounds, carrying a small potted plant. "Thought you could use something living to keep you company," she said, placing it on my windowsill. "It's a peace lily. Hard to kill even for someone working your schedule." Dr. Kim visited me daily after that, sometimes just for 5 minutes between patients, bringing me medical journals, gossip magazines, or occasionally a muffin from the cafe across the street. "My mother had 3 miscarriages before having me," she shared one evening. "She always said the hardest part was feeling forgotten." I wasn't forgotten by my colleagues. Nurses from my unit took turns visiting during their breaks. Tara brought my mail, watered my plants at home, and even paid my bills. She attended my 18-week anatomy scan when I was finally released, squealing with delight when we learned I was having a girl. "She's beautiful," Adelaide, Tara said, staring at the ultrasound image. "Look at her perfect little profile." When I was cleared to return to work, my supervisor switched me to lighter duties, outpatient care instead of the oncology floor. My pregnancy progressed, and I found unexpected solidarity in my prenatal class, bonding with 5 other expectant mothers who met weekly. "My husband thinks I'm exaggerating about the back pain," complained Sarah, a first-grade teacher whose husband attended every class, massaging her shoulders as she spoke. "My mother calls every day to check on me," added Rachel, rolling her eyes but smiling. "She's already bought enough baby clothes for triplets." I remained quiet during these conversations, offering sympathetic nods while nursing my private pain. These women had what I desperately wanted: present partners, involved families the security of knowing they weren't facing parenthood alone. At 26 weeks, I received the devastating news that Jackson's deployment had been extended by at least 3 months. The military was vague about when exactly he would return, only confirming it wouldn't be before my due date. "I'm so sorry," Addie Jackson said, his voice breaking during our call. "I've requested leave for the birth, but it's not looking good. I'm trying everything." That night, lying in bed with my growing belly, I made a decision. I would try once more to connect with my parents before the baby came. Perhaps seeing me heavily pregnant would make it real for them. Perhaps they would finally set aside their disappointment in my choice of husband and embrace their grandchild. I spent weeks preparing for this reconciliation attempt. I bought a new maternity dress in a conservative style my mother would approve of. I practiced what I would say, rehearsing in front of the mirror until my words sounded casual, not desperate. I printed ultrasound photos and had them framed. As my due date approached, I transformed our small second bedroom into a nursery, painting the walls myself, with help from Tara and 2 women from my prenatal class. We assembled a crib I found secondhand, and I arranged the few baby clothes I had purchased on a small dresser. "It's perfect," Tara assured me as we stood in the doorway admiring our work. It wasn't perfect. It was missing grandparents cooing over tiny outfits. It was missing my husband hanging mobiles and arguing about which shade of pink was best. It was missing the family gatherings I had always imagined. But it was filled with love. My love for my unborn daughter and the love of the new community I had found. It would have to be enough. The invitation arrived 3 weeks before my due date, a formal card with embossed lettering inviting me to my parents' annual holiday dinner. They held this event every December 23rd. Typically inviting business associates and a few select family members. I hadn't been included for the past 2 years, not since marrying Jackson. I stood in my kitchen reading the invitation over and over, wondering what had changed. Had my mother had a change of heart? Was this their way of extending an olive branch? The timing seemed perfect. A chance to announce my pregnancy in person, to share my joy with family before the baby arrived. "They invited me to Christmas dinner," I told Tara during our lunch break. "What do you think it means?" "I think it means they're your parents and you're about to have their grandchild," Tara said, squeezing my hand. "Go, but protect your heart, Adelaide." I spent hours choosing what to wear, finally settling on a dark green velvet maternity dress that flattered my 8-month pregnant figure while still looking elegant. I arranged the ultrasound photos in a small album, tucking it into my purse. I even purchased small gifts for my parents, a silver baby rattle for my mother, and a grandpa golf ball set for my father. The night of the dinner, snow was falling lightly as I drove carefully to my parents' Tudor-style home in Brookline. The house was exactly as I remembered, imposing, perfectly maintained, with every holiday decoration placed with mathematical precision. No inflatable Santas or colorful lights for the Williams family, just tasteful wreaths and white lights outlining each architectural feature. I parked behind a row of luxury vehicles and took a deep breath, resting my hands on my rounded belly. "It's going to be okay, little one," I whispered. "They're going to love you." My mother opened the door before I could ring the bell. She was impeccable, as always, in a tailored black dress, pearls gleaming at her throat. Her silver-streaked blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon. "Adelaide," she said, her eyes widening slightly at my obvious pregnancy before quickly composing herself. "You're right on time. Everyone is in the living room." No hug, no comment about the baby. Just the same cool assessment she had given me my entire life. I stepped into the foyer, immediately enveloped by the familiar scents of pine cinnamon and my mother's signature roast. For a moment, I was transported back to childhood, to the brief moments of holiday magic before the inevitable criticism began. "Richard, Adelaide is here," my mother called as she led me into the living room. My father stood by the fireplace, tumbler of scotch in hand, deep in conversation with Uncle Robert. He turned, his eyes flicking over me and lingering for just a second on my stomach before his face settled into a neutral expression. "Adelaide, you look well," he nodded, then returned to his conversation. The room was filled with familiar faces: Aunt Susan with her perpetually disapproving expression, cousins. I rarely spoke to a few of my father's business partners. My cousin Grace caught my eye from across the room and offered a small, genuine smile. She had always been kind to me, though our contact had become infrequent over the years. "Dinner is served," announced our longtime housekeeper Helena, saving me from awkward small talk. We moved to the dining room where the table was set with the Wedgwood china reserved for special occasions. I was seated between Cousin Grace and one of my father's junior executives directly across from Aunt Susan. So, Adelaide, Aunt Susan began as the first course was served. We haven't seen you in quite some time. Still working as a nurse, I presume. Yes, in oncology at Massachusetts General, I replied, reaching for my water glass. I love my work. Such a noble profession, she said, with the faintest hint of condescension, though I always thought you would follow your mother into philanthropy work. Much more suitable for someone from your background. The conversation flowed around me, discussions of stock portfolios, vacation homes, political connections. No one asked about Jackson. No one commented on my pregnancy. It was as if they were collectively pretending not to see it. As dessert was served my mother's famous cranberry cheesecake, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This might be my only chance. I had to take it. I cleared my throat and tapped my water glass lightly with my spoon. The table fell silent, all eyes turning toward me. I wanted to thank you all for including me tonight. I began, my voice steadier than I expected, and I wanted to share some happy news. As you can probably tell, I'm expecting a baby girl. Actually, I'm about to give birth any day now. I reached into my purse and pulled out the ultrasound photos. This is your granddaughter, I said, sliding the images across the table toward my parents. Jackson wishes he could be here, but he's serving overseas. We're both so excited to welcome her into the world. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother stared at the ultrasound photos without reaching for them. My father took a long sip of his scotch, then set the glass down with deliberate care. Then he laughed. Not a joyful laugh, but a short, dismissive chuckle that cut through me like a knife. Not our grandchild, my mother said, her voice calm and clear in the silent room. We don't recognize your marriage to that man, Adelaide. You chose him over your family. I felt as if I'd been slapped. Around the table, expressions ranged from shock to uncomfortable agreement. Aunt Susan nodded slightly in approval of my mother's words. The business associates studied their dessert plates with sudden interest. What are you saying? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. This is your grandchild, your flesh and blood. You made your choice, my father said firmly. You chose to marry beneath you against our wishes. You chose to disconnect from this family. Now you show up clearly looking for support and expect us to celebrate. As their words sank in, I felt the first contraction grip my body, a sharp, twisting pain that took my breath away. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady my breathing. Adelaide, Grace asked, noticing my distress. Are you all right? Before I could answer, Aunt Susan leaned forward. You know, dear, she whispered. Not quite quietly enough, there's still time to fix things. Find a proper husband, someone suitable. Children need stability and connections. Another contraction hit stronger this time. I knew this wasn't just from stress, this was labor. I need to go, I said, struggling to stand. Oh, Adelaide, always with the dramatics, my mother sighed. You can't just leave in the middle of dinner because the conversation isn't going your way. As I pushed back my chair, I felt a rush of warm fluid down my legs. My water had broken right there at my parents' perfectly set holiday table. My water just broke, I announced, watching my mother's expression shift from annoyance to horror as she registered the puddle forming on her antique Persian rug. You're doing this on purpose, my father accused, standing up, creating a scene to manipulate us. I laughed, then a slightly hysterical sound born of pain and disbelief. Yes, Dad. I ruptured my membranes on command just to ruin Mom's rug. Grace jumped up to help me, but my mother intervened. We'll call you an ambulance, she said, reaching for the phone. No, I replied, gathering what dignity I had left. I can drive myself. Don't be ridiculous, my father snapped. You're in labor. I've been alone this entire pregnancy, I said, looking him directly in the eyes. Why stop now? I made my way to the foyer, one hand on my belly, pausing to breathe through another contraction. My mother followed her heels, clicking on the marble floor. Adelaide, you're being childish, she said. Let us call someone. I turned to face her, suddenly calm, despite the pain radiating through my body. You just told everyone in that room that my baby isn't your grandchild. You don't get to play the concerned grandmother now. I walked out into the snowy night, each step a challenge as the contractions intensified. Behind me, I heard the front door close. They hadn't even followed me outside to make sure I got to the car safely. As I carefully lowered myself into the driver's seat, I saw Grace running down the driveway toward me. She reached my car, breath fogging in the cold air. "Adelaide, please let me drive you," she pleaded. "This isn't safe." "I can't go back in there," I said, tears streaming down my face now. "I just can't." "Then I'll come with you. Let me just grab my purse." "No," I interrupted. "They'll turn on you too. I'll be fine. The hospital is only 15 minutes away." I started the engine before she could argue further, carefully, backing out of the driveway as another contraction gripped me. In my rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of my mother standing in the doorway, watching me leave, her expression unreadable. The normally short drive to Massachusetts General felt endless. I drove slowly through the snow, one hand on the wheel, the other pressed against my belly, breathing through contractions that were now coming every 6 minutes. "Just hold on, baby," I whispered. "We're almost there. It's just you and me now, but that's okay. We're going to be okay." I barely remember parking my car at Massachusetts General. The contractions were coming every 4 minutes by then, each one more intense than the last. I stumbled through the emergency entrance, clutching my purse and keys, doubling over as another wave of pain hit me. "I need help," I managed to gasp to the security guard. "I'm in labor." What happened next was a blur of activity. Someone brought a wheelchair. A nurse recognized me. "Adelaide, oh my God, you're in labor," and suddenly I was surrounded by my colleagues, people I worked with daily now, taking charge of my care. "Call Dr. Kim," someone instructed. "And get Tara from the 4th floor. Tell her Adelaide is here." I was wheeled to labor, and delivery changed into a hospital gown and hooked up to monitors that confirmed what I already knew: I was in active labor. My contractions strong and regular. "Your blood pressure is too high," said the attending nurse, frowning at the readout. "Who brought you in?" "I drove myself," I admitted, wincing as another contraction began. The nurse's expression shifted from professional concern to personal worry. "Where's your husband, your family?" Before I could answer, the door burst open and Tara rushed in, still wearing her scrubs from her shift, her dark hair escaping its ponytail. "I came as soon as I heard," she said, immediately taking my hand. "What happened? I thought you weren't due for another 3 weeks." The story spilled out between contractions, the dinner, my parents' rejection, the drive to the hospital. Tara's expression darkened with each detail. "I'm staying with you," she declared. "I'll be your birth partner. Have you called Jackson?" "No service overseas," I managed through gritted teeth as another contraction peaked. "He's on a mission. Can't reach him." Dr. Natalie Kim arrived an hour later, calm and reassuring as she examined me. "You're at 6 centimeters, Adelaide. This baby is coming tonight. Do you want an epidural?" I nodded beyond words as the pain intensified. The anesthesiologist came quickly, and the relief from the epidural was immediate, allowing me to catch my breath for the first time in hours. "The baby's heart rate is dropping slightly with each contraction," Dr. Kim explained after monitoring for another hour. "It's not critical yet, but I'm concerned about the combination of that and your blood pressure. We need to keep a close eye on both of you." What had started as a straightforward labor became increasingly complicated. The hours stretched on 18 in total, my body exhausted from the stress and emotion, even before the physical demands of childbirth. "I can't do this," I whispered to Tara sometime around dawn, my hair plastered to my forehead with sweat, my body trembling with fatigue. "I'm not strong enough." "You're the strongest person I know," Tara replied fiercely. "You've done everything alone until now, but you're not alone anymore. I'm here, and you're going to meet your daughter today." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Dr. Kim announced it was time to push. Tara held one leg, a nurse held the other, and I gathered the last reserves of my strength. "I can see her head," Dr. Kim said after several pushes. "She has dark hair, Adelaide. One more big push." With a final monumental effort, my daughter entered the world at 8:17 in the morning on December 24th. The sound of her first cry broke something open inside me, joy and grief and love, all mingled together in an overwhelming flood. "She's perfect," Dr. Kim said, placing my daughter on my chest. 7 pounds 2 ounces. Congratulations, Mama." Looking down at her tiny red face, her dark eyes blinking up at me in confusion, I felt a love so powerful it eclipsed every hurt, every disappointment. "Hello, Emma," I whispered the name Jackson, and I had chosen together. "I'm your mom." Tara took photos with my phone, capturing those first precious moments to send to Jackson. When a nurse offered to take one of me with the grandparents, Tara quickly intervened. "Just us for now," she said, her arm protectively around my shoulders. Later, when Emma had been weighed, measured, and swaddled, and I had been moved to a recovery room, Tara helped me video call Jackson. The connection was miraculously clear that day. Addie Jackson's voice came through tired but alert. When the camera focused on Emma in my arms, he broke down, tears streaming freely down his face. "She's beautiful. You're beautiful. I'm so sorry I'm not there." "She looks just like you," I told him, tilting the phone, so he could see Emma's dark hair and olive complexion features she had inherited from her father's Italian heritage. "I love you both so much," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm going to try everything to get leave. I need to hold you both." After the call, I expected to feel the crushing weight of his absence more acutely, but instead I felt a strange peace. Emma and I were together. Jackson loved us. Somehow we would be okay. The hospital staff was extraordinarily kind, knowing my situation. Dr. Kim arranged for me to stay an extra day to recover, citing concerns about my blood pressure that were legitimate but also convenient. "You need rest before going home alone with a newborn," she told me. "Use this time. The nurses will help with night feedings if you want. Sleep when you can." I noticed the empty visitor's chair beside my bed, the absence of flowers and balloons that filled the other rooms on the maternity ward. But each time that observation threatened to pull me into sadness, I looked at Emma and found my center again. My coworkers rallied around me. Nurses from my floor came by with small gifts, onesies, blankets, a homemade meal to freeze for later. Dr. Kim stopped by at the end of her shift with a stuffed elephant for Emma. "My daughter slept with this until she was 5, she said with a smile. "I washed it, don't worry." The discharge nurse helped me dress Emma in her going-home outfit, a simple white sleeper with tiny pink hearts that I had carefully selected months ago. Tara arrived to drive us home, having already stocked my refrigerator with prepared meals and my bathroom with postpartum supplies. "Your apartment is clean. I've got a lasagna in the oven and I'm staying on your couch tonight," she announced, brooking no argument as she helped me into the wheelchair required for discharge. Hospital policy. My first week with Emma was a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and snatched moments of sleep. I learned the rhythm of her cries, the way her tiny fingers curled around mine, the exact position she preferred to be held. Jackson and I video called whenever possible, his face lighting up at each new photo or milestone, no matter how small. "She smiled today," I told him on day 6, even though I knew it was probably just gas. "That's my girl," he said proudly. "She knows she's loved." On the 7th day, my doorbell rang. I had just managed to get Emma down for a nap after a particularly fussy morning. Exhausted, I considered ignoring it, but the rings became more insistent. I peered through the peephole and felt my heart stutter. My mother stood in the hallway alone, clutching what appeared to be a gift bag. I stood frozen at the door, watching my mother through the peephole. She rang the bell again, then knocked softly. "Adelaide, I know you're in there. Please open the door. I want to see the baby." I took a deep breath, steadying myself before turning the lock. When I opened the door, I was struck by how different my mother looked. Her makeup was minimal, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of in its usual perfect arrangement. She looked older somehow. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice softer than I could remember hearing it in years. "Let me see the baby, please." I glanced past her to the parking lot visible from my second-floor apartment. My father's Mercedes was idling near the entrance, his silhouette visible behind the wheel. He hadn't even bothered to come to the door. "What child?" I asked, my voice calm and steady. "What grandchild? I believe you made your position quite clear at dinner last week." My mother flinched as I threw her own words back at her. "Adelaide, please. You know I didn't mean it. We were just surprised." "Surprised?" I repeated. I was visibly 8 months pregnant. "What exactly surprised you? That I showed up to dinner? That I mentioned the baby? You were all pretending not to notice." "May I come in?" she asked, glancing nervously toward the neighboring apartments. Heaven forbid someone witness this uncomfortable family moment. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside to let her enter. My tiny apartment was a stark contrast to my parents' home, cozy, rather than grand furnished with secondhand finds, and simple IKEA pieces rather than antiques and designer furniture. My mother's eyes swept the living room, taking in the baby swing in the corner, the burp cloths draped over the couch arm, the breast pump parts drying on the kitchen counter. Her gaze softened when she spotted a framed ultrasound photo on the bookshelf. "We brought a gift," she said, holding out the bag she'd been carrying, a pale pink affair with silver tissue paper peeking out the top. "Why are you here, Mom?" I asked, not reaching for the bag. "Is it because the Andersons asked about your new grandchild at church? Or did Aunt Susan's daughter-in-law post something on Facebook about my mental issues that you need to verify?" My mother's expression confirmed my suspicion. "People are talking," she admitted. "Susan told everyone you had some kind of breakdown at dinner, that you stormed out, creating a scene." "I was in labor," I said flatly, which turned complicated and dangerous because I drove myself to the hospital during a snowstorm while having contractions. Emma could have died. I could have died. "Emma," my mother repeated, testing the name. "Is that what you named her?" "Emma Grace," I said. After Grandma, Emma, and Cousin Grace, the only person at that dinner who showed me basic human decency. My mother had the grace to look ashamed. She set the gift bag on my coffee table and took a tentative step toward the hallway that led to the bedroom. "Is she sleeping? Could I just peek at her?" "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to reject my child one day and claim her the next when it's socially convenient. That's not how this works." "Adelaide, we're family," my mother pleaded, real tears forming in her eyes. "You can't keep your father and me from our only grandchild." "You kept yourselves from her when you said she wasn't your grandchild," I replied. "When you refused to acknowledge my marriage to her father. When you let me walk out into a snowstorm in active labor rather than help me." "We didn't mean it, my mother," cried the careful composure she had maintained my entire life finally cracking. "Your father was just hurt that you chose that man over us." "I never chose Jackson over you," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "I chose Jackson in addition to you. You're the ones who made it an either-or proposition. You're the ones who cut me off when I married the man I love." "He's not suitable," my mother insisted, though with less conviction. "He can't provide for you the way you deserve." I laughed at that. "He provides everything I need. Respect, love, partnership, more than Dad ever gave you, if we're being honest." That barb landed. My mother's shoulders sagged slightly, her gaze dropping to the floor. From the bedroom, Emma began to cry the hungry wail that I had quickly learned meant she wouldn't wait long for feeding. My mother's head snapped up, her eyes fixed on the hallway. "That's her," she whispered. "Please, Adelaide, just let me see her." I was torn between my protective instincts and the small part of me that had always craved my mother's approval. But Emma's cries grew more insistent, grounding me in the present moment and what mattered most. "I need to feed my daughter," I said, "and you need to leave." "Adelaide, don't be cruel," my mother said, her voice hardening. "We're trying to make amends." "No, you're trying to save face with your friends," I corrected her. Making amends would start with a sincere apology and acknowledgement of my husband as Emma's father. It would include admitting you were wrong to reject us. "Your father will never say that," my mother admitted. "Then we have nothing more to discuss," I said, moving to open the front door. My mother's expression shifted from pleading to cold. "You're being very short-sighted, Adelaide. Think about Emma's future. Your inheritance, the family connections, the opportunities we could provide." "Are you really trying to bribe me with money to access my child?" I asked incredulously. "I'm trying to make you see reason," she snapped. "Family legacy matters. Stability matters. What can you give her on a nurse's salary in this tiny apartment?" Emma's cries grew more frantic, and I felt my milk beginning to let down in response to her need. "What I can give her is unconditional love," I said. "Something I never got from you or Dad. Now please leave before you wake the neighbors." My mother grabbed her purse, her movements sharp with anger. "This isn't over, Adelaide. Your father and I will not be denied access to our granddaughter." "What granddaughter?" I repeated as she stepped into the hallway. "You made your choice at dinner, Mom. I'm just honoring it." I closed the door before she could respond, leaning against it as the adrenaline of the confrontation left me shaking. Through the door, I heard her sharp intake of breath, perhaps preparing for another argument before her footsteps retreated down the hallway. Emma's cries had reached their crescendo. I hurried to the bedroom, lifting her from the bassinet and cradling her against my chest. "It's okay, sweet girl," I murmured, settling into the rocking chair to nurse her. "Mommy's here." As she latched on her tiny hand resting against my breast, her dark eyes locked on my face, I felt a resolve solidify within me. This perfect, innocent child deserved better than conditional love based on social status or family legacy. She deserved to be cherished for exactly who she was. After Emma finished nursing and drifted back to sleep, I carefully documented the entire interaction with my mother in a journal. Dates, times, exact quotes, everything I could remember. If my parents were serious about trying to use their money and influence to force access to Emma, I needed to be prepared. This wasn't the postpartum period I had imagined. Instead of family support and celebration, I was contemplating potential legal battles. But looking down at my daughter's peaceful face, I knew I would fight any battle necessary to protect her from the conditional love that had marked my own childhood. In the weeks that followed my mother's visit, I settled into a routine with Emma. Each morning, I took her picture in the same spot by the window, documenting her subtle daily changes to share with Jackson. We developed our own traditions: Sunday morning pancakes, even though Emma was too young for anything but breast milk. I still narrated the process to her daily walks in the park, when weather permitted, and bath time songs that I made up on. The spot. "Your daddy loves you, yes he does," I would sing as I gently washed her dark hair. "He's coming home to kiss those toes, those tiny baby toes." Jackson and I video called whenever possible, his face lighting up every time he saw Emma. "She's getting so big," he would marvel, even when the changes were imperceptible to anyone but us. "I swear she recognizes my voice, Addie." My parents made no further direct attempts to visit after that first confrontation, though I received formal cards announcing Emma's birth announcements they had printed, without my permission, featuring a generic baby photo that wasn't even Emma. I returned them unopened. 3 weeks after Emma's birth, there was another knock at my door. This time, when I looked through the peephole, I saw my cousin Grace shifting nervously in the hallway, loaded down with shopping bags. "I came alone," she said when I opened the door. "Aunt Martha and Uncle Richard don't know I'm here." Grace had always been the family rebel in small ways, studying art instead of business, wearing colorful clothes, to formal family functions, dating women, though never bringing them to family events. We had been close as children, but had drifted apart as adult responsibilities and family dynamics created distance. "I brought some things for the baby," she explained, hefting the bags, "and information you should probably have." Over coffee at my kitchen table, Grace filled me in on the family gossip. My standoff with my parents had created significant divisions within the extended family. Aunt Susan was firmly in my parents' camp, declaring me unstable and attention-seeking. Uncle Robert and his wife were more sympathetic but unwilling to openly defy my father, who controlled much of the family's business interests. "Your mom has been telling everyone you're suffering from postpartum depression and making irrational decisions," Grace explained. "She's positioning herself as the concerned grandmother being cruelly shut out." "Of course she is," I sighed, adjusting Emma in my arms as she slept. "What about you? Won't you get in trouble for coming here?" Grace shrugged. "I'm already the family disappointment for being 30 and unmarried. Besides, I just got a job offer in New York. I'm moving next month, so their disapproval has less power over me now." Before she left, Grace held Emma for the first time, tears forming in her eyes as tiny fingers wrapped around her thumb. "She's beautiful, Adelaide. You did good." "Thank you for coming," I said, hugging her goodbye. "It means more than you know." Grace's visit was the first crack in my isolation, but not the last. 2 days later, Tara arrived with an invitation. "My parents want you and Emma to join us for Sunday dinner," she announced. "Mom's making her famous lasagna, and she's dying to hold the baby." "I don't want to impose," I protested weakly, though the thought of a home-cooked meal I didn't have to prepare myself was tempting. "It's not an imposition, it's an adoption," Tara laughed. "Mom has decided you're her third daughter now. Resistance is futile." The Ramirez family welcomed Emma and me with overwhelming warmth. Tara's mother, Carmen, immediately took Emma from my arms with the confident movements of a woman who had raised 3 children. "Go eat," she instructed. "Abuelas are for holding babies while mamas restore themselves." That first dinner turned into a weekly tradition. Every Sunday, I would pack up Emma and drive to the Ramirez home in Dorchester, where Carmen would immediately claim my daughter while Tara's father, Miguel, insisted on carrying all my baby supplies. Tara's younger sister, Lucia, still in high school, appointed herself Emma's honorary aunt, constantly buying tiny hair bows and socks with outrageous patterns. Family isn't just blood, Carmen told me one Sunday as we washed dishes side by side. It's who shows up, who stays, who loves without conditions. At Emma's 1-month checkup, Dr. Kim suggested I join a support group for new mothers. It's not just for women with postpartum depression, she explained. It's for any new mom who needs community. The group met weekly in a church basement near the hospital, 8 women with babies ranging from 2 weeks to 6 months old. There was Diana, a corporate lawyer whose husband worked international assignments. Jasmine, a single mother by choice who had used a sperm donor. Rachel, whose husband was deployed with the Navy, and others, each with their own story. What united us was the sometimes overwhelming experience of new motherhood and the need for understanding that could only come from others going through the same challenges. We exchanged tips on everything from breast pumps to sleep training, celebrated each baby's milestones, and provided a judgment-free space to admit when we were struggling. I haven't showered in 3 days, confessed Melissa, mother of twins, during one meeting. And I may have eaten Cheerios off my shirt yesterday because I couldn't remember when I last had a meal. Last week, I put the dirty diaper in the hamper and the onesie in the trash, I admitted, generating knowing laughter from the group. Dr. Kim continued to check in, regularly stopping by my apartment on her way home from the hospital, sometimes just to hold Emma for a few minutes and ask how I was really doing. You're building a village, she observed one evening watching, as I organized a calendar filled with support group meetings, Sunday dinners, with the Ramirez family and video calls with Jackson. It's different from what you expected, but it's strong. When Emma was 2 months old, I received an unexpected call from Jackson's commanding officer. We've been made aware of your situation, Mrs. Turner, he said formally. The unit has taken up a collection to fly Sergeant Turner home for a short leave. He'll have 5 days transportation included. I later learned that Jackson had never mentioned our family situation to his unit, maintaining his usual stoic professionalism. It was Tara who had written to his commanding officer explaining that Jackson had never met his daughter and detailing my parents' rejection. The men and women in his unit, many parents themselves, had immediately organized a fundraiser to cover the expensive last-minute flights. Nothing could have prepared me for the moment Jackson walked through the airport arrival gate, still in his uniform, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found me holding Emma. He dropped his duffel bag and ran the last few yards, enveloping us both in an embrace so tight I could feel his heartbeat. She's real, he whispered, looking down at Emma with wonder. I knew she was real, but seeing her... Do you want to hold your daughter, I asked, already knowing the answer. Jackson's hands trembled as he took Emma for the first time, cradling her with exquisite care. Hello, Emma, he said, his voice breaking. I'm your dad. I'm sorry I'm late. Those 5 days were the closest thing to perfect I had experienced since Emma's birth. Jackson and I moved in a bubble of joy, taking hundreds of photos, staying up late, talking even when we were exhausted, making plans for the future. He bathed Emma, changed diapers, walked the floor with her when she was fussy, cramming months of fatherhood into less than a week. On our 3rd day together, as we walked with Emma in the park near our apartment, I noticed my father's car drive slowly past. He didn't stop or acknowledge us, but I knew he had seen Jackson in his military uniform holding his daughter with unmistakable love. Your parents drive by sometimes, Jackson asked, noticing my tension. That's the 2nd time I've seen them, I admitted. They never approach. I think they're checking on us from a distance. Jackson's jaw tightened. After what they said to you, after letting you drive yourself to the hospital in labor, they're lucky I'm not confronting them right now. I squeezed his hand. They don't matter right now. This time is for us. Saying goodbye at the airport was excruciating. Jackson held Emma until the final boarding call, memorizing her face, her smell, the weight of her in his arms. 3 more months, he promised. Then I'm home for good. We'll figure everything out then. After he left, mysterious packages began appearing at my door, baby clothes in the next size up, gift cards for grocery delivery, a handmade quilt with Emma's name embroidered in the corner. There was never a note, but I suspected Grace had orchestrated these anonymous gifts. With each week that passed, I grew more confident as Emma's mother. I returned to work part-time when she was 3 months old, finding a wonderful daycare near the hospital run by a retired nurse who gave each baby individual attention. Tara adjusted her schedule to align with mine whenever possible, and the Ramirez family was always available in emergencies. I began volunteering one evening a month at a support center for single mothers, sharing resources, and sometimes just listening to women who felt as alone as I had in those early weeks. My experience became something valuable I could offer others, proof that it was possible to create a family of choice when the family of origin failed. "You've helped me more than you know," said a young mother named Amber one evening. "When you talked about driving yourself to the hospital, I realized I wasn't the only one who'd been abandoned when I needed support the most." As Emma grew and developed her personality, serious and observant like Jackson, stubborn like me, I started a blog documenting our journey. What began as a personal record of Emma's milestones became an unexpected lifeline to other women in similar situations. "My parents disowned me when I married outside. Our religion," wrote one reader. "Reading about how you've created a new definition of family gives me hope. My husband deployed when I was 5 months pregnant and still hasn't met our son," shared another. "Your video call tips have been a lifesaver for keeping him connected." The blog became another piece of the mosaic of support I was building, giving, and receiving connection, in equal measure creating something beautiful from broken expectations. 1 year after Emma's tumultuous entry into the world, we celebrated her first birthday, surrounded by our chosen family. The Ramirez clan arrived early to decorate my apartment with pink and gold balloons. Tara baked a cake shaped like the stuffed elephant Dr. Kim had given Emma in the hospital, still her favorite comfort object. Friends from the mother's support group brought their babies, now crawling or toddling, creating happy chaos in my small living room. "I can't believe it's been a year," Tara said, watching Emma smash cake into her dark curls with single-minded determination. "Remember when you were terrified to give her a bath alone? Remember when I put her diaper on backwards 3 times in a row?" I laughed. Jackson had been home for 2 months by then, his service completed with honors. He had found work as a paramedic with the city while taking night classes toward a nursing degree. Our tiny apartment felt complete with him in it, the three of us finally together as we had always planned. As we cleaned up after the party, Emma sleeping soundly amid her new toys, the doorbell rang. Jackson answered while I continued washing dishes, expecting a guest who had forgotten something. "Adelaide," he called, his voice carefully neutral. "There's a delivery for you." I dried my hands and walked to the door to find a courier holding an envelope and a bouquet of lilies, my favorite flowers, though I couldn't remember ever telling my parents that. "Sign here, please," the courier said, handing me an electronic pad. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter on my father's personal stationery. "Adelaida, asterisk. A year ago today you became a mother and we failed to become grandparents. There is no excuse for our behavior at dinner that night or in the months that followed. Pride and foolish notions of family status led us to miss the most important event in your life. Asterisk. Asterisk. If you are willing, we would like to meet Emma and Jackson properly. We understand if you refuse, and we will respect whatever boundaries you set. The choice is entirely yours. Asterisk. Asterisk. With regret and hope, asterisk. Asterisk, Dad, asterisk." I read the letter twice, then handed it to Jackson. His expression darkened as he read, jaw tightening at the memories of how they had treated me. "What do you think?" I asked when he looked up. "I think they hurt you deeply," he said carefully, "and I think only you can decide if they deserve a second chance." I thought about it for days, discussing it with Tara, with my support group, even with Dr. Kim when she came for dinner the following week. Everyone offered perspectives, but emphasized the same point: the decision was mine to make. In the end, I called my father's office and left a message with his secretary. "We can meet at Riverside Park on Saturday. 1 hour. Just to talk." My parents arrived 15 minutes early, sitting nervously on a bench near the playground. My mother had abandoned her usual formal attire for simple slacks and a sweater. My father wore jeans for the first time in my memory. Jackson, Emma, and I approached slowly, my heart pounding with anxiety and something like hope. Emma was perched on Jackson's hip, babbling happily, oblivious to the tension. "Adelaide," my father said, standing as we approached. His eyes were fixed on Emma, wonder and regret mingled in his expression. "Thank you for coming." "This is Jackson, my husband," I said pointedly. And this is Emma." My mother stepped forward hesitantly. "She looks just like you did as a baby," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Those eyes—" "Would you like to hold her?" Jackson asked, surprising me with his generosity. "She's shy with new people, but she warms up quickly." That first meeting was awkward conversations, stilted and careful. My parents clearly wanted to make amends, but didn't know how. Jackson was polite but protective, his body angled between my parents and me, ready to end the visit at the first sign of distress. "We've been seeing a family therapist," my father said as we prepared to leave. "We're trying to understand why we put status and appearance above our relationship with you. It's no excuse, but we want to do better." It was a start. Not forgiveness, not yet, but an opening. Over the following months, we established careful boundaries for rebuilding our relationship. My parents could visit once every 2 weeks, always at our apartment where we felt secure. They had to acknowledge Jackson as my husband and Emma's father without qualification. Any disrespect would end the visit immediately. "It's like training puppies," Jackson joked after one particularly successful visit. "They're learning." The road to reconciliation wasn't smooth. There were setbacks: my mother's inadvertent comment about Emma's daycare being less than ideal, my father's reflexive questions about our financial planning that came across as criticism. Each time, I calmly ended the visit, explaining exactly which boundary had been crossed. Slowly, they began to understand. The real turning point came when Jackson received an offer for an advanced paramedic training program that would mean better pay but required intensive study. My parents offered to watch Emma 1 day a week so I could pick up an extra hospital shift to compensate for Jackson's reduced hours during training. "You don't have to accept," Jackson said when I told him about their offer. "We can figure something else out." "I know," I replied, "but I think they're genuinely trying, and Emma seems to like them." Our daughter had indeed taken to her grandparents, especially my father, who displayed a patience and playfulness with her that I had never seen in my childhood. He would sit on the floor for hours, building block towers for her to knock down his expensive slacks covered in baby food stains, completely unconcerned. When Jackson completed his training top of his class, my parents hosted a small celebration dinner. As we gathered around the table, the first time I had returned to their home since that disastrous holiday dinner, my father raised his glass. "To Jackson," he said, "your dedication to serving others and providing for your family exemplifies what true success looks like. We're proud to have you as our son-in-law." The words weren't perfect, still carrying echoes of their values around provision and success, but the sentiment was sincere. Jackson nodded in acknowledgement, reaching under the table to squeeze my hand. Later that night, as we put Emma to bed in her room at our new, slightly larger apartment, made possible by both our incomes and, yes, a small gift from my parents that I had initially resisted, but eventually accepted as the peace offering it was intended to be, I reflected on our journey. "Do you think we did the right thing?" I asked Jackson as we watched Emma sleeping, letting them back into our lives. "I think forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," he replied thoughtfully. "It means moving forward with clear eyes. They hurt you deeply, and that will always be part of your story. But Emma deserves the chance to make her own relationship with them, and they seem genuinely determined to do better." He was right. The past couldn't be erased, but it didn't have to determine our future. My parents would never be the warm, demonstrative grandparents that Carmen and Miguel Ramirez were, but they were learning to love Emma on her terms, not theirs. The journey from that awful night when I drove myself to the hospital had taught me more about strength, family, and self-worth than I could have imagined. I had discovered that family wasn't defined by blood or obligation, but by who showed up when it mattered. Tara rushing to be my birth partner, Dr. Kim bringing a plant to brighten my hospital room, the Ramirez family folding us into their Sunday dinners, my support group sharing midnight texts about breastfeeding challenges. Most importantly, I learned that protecting your peace sometimes means closing doors, but when you do, the right ones open. The family Emma is growing up with looks nothing like what I had imagined, but it's richer, more diverse, and far more authentic than the picture-perfect version I once craved. As Emma grows, she'll learn that family is built through choices and actions, not just circumstance. She'll know her worth isn't tied to status or others' approval. And she'll understand that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, allowing you to move forward without being weighed down by past hurts. This journey of motherhood, of creating family on my own terms, continues to unfold in ways I never could have predicted. but I face it now with confidence in my own strength and gratitude for the village that surrounds us with love. If you're going through something similar, family rejection, navigating motherhood alone, rebuilding broken relationships, know that you're stronger than you believe. Your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it. Sometimes the family you build matters more than the one you were born into. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family for your own well-being? Or found unexpected support from people who became like family? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe and like this video. Your support helps me continue sharing these journeys. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that healing isn't linear, but it's always possible.